Witches and witchcraft and how they came to be. That's what this video is all about. And it should be fun, because I want it to be fun. And that fun begins with the beginning of time. We're pretty close to it anyway. But before we take that road to the distant past, let's look at the definition of what a witch is. And the first thing you're told is that a witch is a woman. And yeah, we're going to ask ourselves why that is. And the answer is a bit disturbing, leastways to me, because the answer is that we men have always sought out ways to humiliate and control the opposite sex. And I've never understood that. For whatever reason, from protecting a patriarchal belief system to just wanting to silence outspoken women, identifying women as witches was a thing dating as far back as ancient Greece, where we find Circe, the witch, in Homer's epic poem, the Odyssey. In fact, there is also Hecate, the Greek goddess, the patron goddess of magic and witchcraft. We also have to mention Lilith, who in Jewish folklore is thought to be the mother of all witches. But it wasn't until the 1400s that witches as we think of them today appeared. And the two questions to ask are, why did witchcraft become prominent back in the day, and why were they all women? As to the why the rise of witchcraft, well, from a personal opinion, it was all ignorance. That's right, I said ignorance. Our ancestors were ignorant. But that is just my opinion, because the truth is there were a couple of reasons. For instance, there was a lot of social change going on in the 1400s and times were tough. And unfortunately, older women were considered a burden. And yet, when it comes to the elderly, not much has changed. And as far as why women were always a bad egg in the Book of Witches is mostly because women were considered morally and physically weak, and they just could not resist the temptations offered up by the devil. This was actually clearly defined back in 1486 with the publication of the influential Malleus Maleficarum, a book that tied a woman's weakness back to Eve, the devil, and an apple. Of course, since women were pretty much marginalized, they didn't hold much of any kind of political power, which means women were pretty easy scapegoats. Now, we also have to talk about the role religion played in making witchcraft a thing. At the time, there was a lot of conflict between Catholic and Protestants because of a little thing called the Reformation. And by the 1600s, both sides were accusing the other of being devil worshippers. And yeah, with the Inquisition, churches and others saw a way to increase their power. But what it all comes down to is that the Catholic Church rooted the thought of devil worship in paganism. If you weren't a God-fearing Christian, you were by default a pagan devil worshipper. Now it's time to note that witches are not all evil, from folk witches to green witches, with necromancers and cosmic witches thrown in. The role and flavor of the witch has changed to meet the changing needs of the changing times. And now I gotta change it up a bit and maybe do a little backtracking to cover my old ass. Because while I've spent the majority of time in this video talking about women and why they are identified as witches, know that men too are often outed and burned, or worse. Known as warlocks, the term originates from an Old English derogatory word meaning traitor or oath breaker. And yeah, we even burned a couple of dudes at the stake during the Salem witch trials. But for the most part, men that practice magic are better known today as wizards or sorcerers, and their use of magic is different from the magic that witches use. And that is because wizards study the arts of magic, and witches, well, they just apparently make a pact with the devil to get their magic. Of course, a lot has changed with witchcraft over the years, and today, Wicca, as those who practice the art is known, here in today's world is considered to be a modern religion. And no, not all witches are bad witches, and today's witches are diverse, with Christian and atheist witches along with witches from cultures all over the world. That is because witchcraft is not a religion in and of itself, but as I read, it's apparently just a component of religion. For me personally, if I could cast a spell to get others like you to watch my videos, I'd probably sign up to be a witch, but no amount of witchcraft is gonna help this old man out, and that is for sure. Witches, women, why? I don't know. Yeah, I do know I just did a video on it. Told you all about it. You know, as a man, when I look at back through the history of how we treated women, it's like, what the fuck? You know, they're part of humanity, part of our species, and we treat them like shit. But what is it about the human male? I just don't understand. Okay, but you know, this was a kind of a little bit of an agonizing video to do. Agonizing in the sense that there's just so many instances in human history of how poorly we have treated our companions, the women. Fuck, you know? Yeah, okay. I'm astonished, and I think that astonishment shows. I just don't, you know. It doesn't matter. Why do we have such a hard problem as a species handing out respect? It doesn't matter if a person is different than us, we don't like them. If they look different, we don't like them. Different sex, we don't like them. If they want to practice a different religion, don't like them. You know what the fuck, people? It seems to me that we should relish, that we should celebrate all the differences, the diversity of our reality, not just of our species, but of our reality. Okay, most people are not going to understand what I mean by that, and that's because you're not as smart as I am, and that's okay. But I want you to respect me anyway, because I am smarter than you, so respect me. I think it's time for me to shut up, finish these, do the last of these 6 shots that I've done, and maybe take a little fucking nap. Here's to ya. And here's to. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of forgot what I'm doing here, didn't I? Witches, women. What the fuck, man? Let's get with it, please. That's all I've got to say.